Before Ketan Agarwal fell from Lohagad Fort, police believe Siya Goyal had already studied another fall. Two young women, two arranged marriages, two relationships that existed before the wedding was ever arranged, two trips far from home, two cliffs, two cases where the person closest to the victim became the center of the investigation. Sonam Raghuvanshi in Meghalaya, Ketan Agarwal in Maharashtra. Now, this is not a story about one murder resembling another. According to investigators, it may be a story about one murder built out of the lessons of another. Hold on to that sentence because by the end of this, it's going to sound very different. Now, let's be very careful here because similarity does not prove copy. But the similarities in these two cases are very hard to ignore. In both stories, there was an arranged marriage structure. In both stories, there was allegedly another relationship outside that arrangement. In both stories, the woman at the center of the case allegedly believed that marriage was not something she could simply refuse. In both stories, the victim was taken away from the comfort of familiar people, a honeymoon, a trip, a fort, a location where there is less oversight, less family, less immediate suspicion. And in both stories, the final act happened at a height, a gorge, a fall. No clear eyewitness to the exact moment that mattered most. Hold on to that because that absence, no direct witness, no clean CCTV, no one clearly seeing the push, is not a small detail. In a murder case, that can become the entire battlefield. On their own, none of this proves anything. Coincidences happen. But when investigators say one case may have shaped the other, the parallel stops being a trivia. It becomes method. And method is a very different word. Drop the phrase crime of passion because it doesn't fit here. Investigators reportedly describe this very differently. Not an explosion, but a decision. Not heat, but calculation. Sources close to the case say it involved intention, arranged alibis, and a plan built to survive detection, trial, and even conviction. Desperation might explain the pressure someone felt. It does not explain the planning that followed. A crime of passion happens in a moment. This one, investigators believe, was assembled piece by piece. Who goes on the trip? Who stands where? Who calls whom? What does the phone show? What does the alibi say? What happens after the body is found? This is not madness in the moment. That is calculation under pressure. And this is where the story becomes very uncomfortable because sources familiar with the investigation also say Siya may not only have planned this crime, she may have planned the entire investigation that followed. Here's the sharpest claim in the entire case. Sources say the browsing history recovered from a seized phone allegedly shows Siya Goyal going through details of the Sonam Raghuvanshi case in Meghalaya. Not just reading about it, studying it. And the same phone, investigators say, shows something colder. Searches asking whether women are beaten in public custody. What rights a female prisoner actually has. Sit with what that means. This isn't someone allegedly planning a crime forward, motive, trip, moment. This is someone allegedly planning a crime backwards, starting from the interrogation room and working out what she'd need to survive it. What will police ask? What will they check first? What did Sonam allegedly get wrong? Where did the case leave trails? Where did the alibi break? What should be deleted? What should be explained? What happens in custody? What rights does a woman have in police custody? See the pattern? These details matter because it suggests fear, yes, but also anticipation. Not just will I be caught? A much colder question. If I am caught, can they actually prove it? Remember that. We are coming back to it. Then came another reported twist. Sources say police are also examining whether Siya and Chetan Chaudhary had already married months earlier after her engagement. If that is verified, it changes the emotional geometry of the entire case, because then this is not simply a story of a young woman who did not want one marriage. It may become the story of a woman who had already chosen another marriage. And that makes the central question even harder to sit with. If she had already chosen, why did murder allegedly feel easier than saying no? That is not a legal answer, that is a social question, and this case has dragged that question into the middle of one of Pune's most close-knit business communities. Now, let's be careful here. This is not an argument against arranged marriage. Millions work, most people, most families never come anywhere near this. But ground reporting from inside the community describes something narrower. A culture built on reputation, on unwritten rules about who you marry and on whose terms, where saying no can be read as betrayal, not disagreement. And that distinction matters more than it sounds, because when disagreement gets treated like disobedience, some people argue, some people leave, some people quietly break, and in the rarest, darkest cases, someone decides the other person simply has to disappear. Which brings us to the bigger question, the one that goes beyond Siya Goyal entirely. Every high-profile crime leaves behind a public record, not just for the court, for everyone watching. Every high-profile murder leaves two records behind, one for the court, one for the public, and maybe now, one for the next person watching. A crime story tells society how a crime was solved, but to the wrong mind, it may also reveal something else. What mistakes exposed the accused? What phone calls mattered? Which alibi failed? Which search history survived? Which witness changed everything? Which gap gave the defense room? We think we are watching crime, but somebody else may be studying procedure. That is the blueprint problem. The more a case is discussed, the more it teaches. The question is, who is learning? Now this is where the previous question returns. The scariest part is not that someone may believe they can escape suspicion. Suspicion is very easy to create. Proof is, however, very different. Proof has to survive court. Proof needs a chain, a motive, a method, a link, a timeline, a witness, a forensic trail, something that connects the pieces so tightly that reasonable doubt has nowhere to breathe. And if the police are right, the alleged plan here was not simply to avoid being suspected. It was to create enough loose ends that suspicion and conviction would become two very different things. That is much darker than a cover-up. That is someone understanding the gap between what everyone thinks happened and what the law can actually prove. The tragedy of the Ketan Agarwal case is not simply that a young man died. It is that the people accused of killing him may have believed the system itself could be studied. Family pressure could be managed, digital trails could be controlled, alibis could be arranged, public suspicion could be survived, and maybe even the law could be made to hesitate. A murder case should always end with justice. But in the age of endless crime coverage, every murder also leaves behind something else. A story, a pattern, a warning, and sometimes, for the wrong person, a blueprint. The law studies crime to solve them. The public studies crime to understand them, but after Siya Goyal, the question is much darker. Who else is studying them and why? You are watching FaultLines. I am Abhijit.